Hello, everybody. Good morning, or sort of. Um, so, I want to talk about a topic that comes up a lot these days in my world, which is software development, which is about AI, right? How does AI affect us? How will AI affect our jobs? And I want to start actually by talking a little bit about how AI and humans are different and what to pull from that and how to apply that sort of into your lives or into what you're doing. So, one of the interesting things about, I guess, the intro is my background of GitHub. So, like she said, when I started GitHub, there were 4 of us that had this sort of side project, and it grew and it grew and it grew, and we never really thought that it was barely going to be a full-time job for us, and we kind of quit our jobs and started, working full-time on this. And when we get to the end of the story, we sell the company for $7 billion, right? And so when you go from 4 people sort of, working out of cafes to this big sale, there's a couple things that you learn. Actually, there's a lot of things that you learn. One is a lot about people, because I've never really worked in a company that was bigger than a couple dozen people, and now, I find myself in this company that has hundreds and hundreds of employees. I don't even know everybody. We're onboarding 12 people every week, right? And so you learn a lot about human beings. But when you sell a company for a lot of money, now, I don't know if anybody, raise your hand if you personally know anybody who's won the lottery, right? I know 100 people who won the lottery, right? Because all of the early employees from GitHub, when you sell a company for $7 billion, there's a lot of people that never need to work again in their lives. And what's interesting about people who never need to work again in their lives is what happens when they never need to work again, right? What do they do? What do your friends do if they win? What would you do if you all of a sudden found out, you have $100 million the next day? And what's interesting is that I know a lot of people now that have done this, and it's been 5 years, and I want to go through just my co-founders and talk about what are they doing now, right, after not having to work again. And so, one, Chris, he has a small indie game publishing company, and is working on trying to get a handful of people, these small companies, to have their games blow up. Tom is investing in companies, building his own startup, doing medical research, supporting projects around the world. PJ, well, I am working on GitButler, right? I'm grinding away at a new startup. I'm trying to go on stage and talk to people and talk about my product and kind of get that working and going. And PJ is a professional race car driver who just did Le Mans 24 a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks before that, he walled his car at 19 Gs. This is what he's doing now, right? People that never have to work again are working harder than we were when we were working on GitHub, honestly. I think every one of us, right? And so what's interesting to me about this is what it tells you about human beings. Human beings are inherently creative. We want to create things, right? And what's interesting about this is comparing it to, say, AI or the tools that we have when we're afraid of what is AI going to do, what is AI going to take from us, what do I do that I can't do anymore? AI has none of this. AI is not, it will never have emotion. It will never have feelings. It will never have serotonin problems. It won't get hungry or angry, right? These are things that drive us. It won't fall in love. It won't be driven to do something that is creative, to need to create something, right? And I know from experience that human beings need to create. It's the only thing that's interesting. None of us are sitting on a beach in Tahiti, drinking margaritas for the rest of our lives. As much fun as that is for a week, it gets boring very fast, right? Because perfection is boring. When I was in university, actually, my favorite course I ever took in university, I went to UC San Diego, and my favorite course that I ever took was a class called Musical Psychoacoustics, which is a really weird name for a class. It was a cognitive science class. And one of the most interesting things that I learned in this class is this experiment. So the guy who was teaching the class was a musician. I'm a horrible musician, but it was a very cool class. He wrote software that played music. So it would take sheet music and it would play music as though, it sounded like somebody was playing a violin. And people didn't like it. And he was trying to figure out why. And he changed the program so that it was imperfect, so that notes would go on a little bit too long or a little bit too short, or they'd be off by milliseconds, right? Just a little bit off. And he would call it introducing dirt, right? He'd introduce dirt into the system. And when human beings listen to the same music that is imperfect, they like it more, right? They're more used to it. They find it more interesting. Perfection is not interesting, right? Humanity is interesting. Imperfections are interesting. Differences are interesting. And what I find interesting about that is what drives us, right? And how that differs from what, I don't know, AI can do, because AI doesn't have this taste, right? It can reason statistically, sort of probability to make it seem to us kind of like it's human, but it's not really gonna have this dirt, right? It's not gonna seem right. And so nothing that it produces is really going to be what is interesting from us from a human standpoint. And I find this useful when we think about AI, when we think about what we can do with it, right? It's a new technology that some people, I think, are afraid of, but what's more interesting is how do we use it? So all of you work somewhere. Some of you may think, how is AI gonna change my job, or what can I do with it, or how can I start a startup that solves some problem? And I think what's valuable in that equation is by looking at what is it good at and what are humans good at. And this has always been the thing with technology, right? How can we make what we're trying to do more efficient with technologies that come along? And this is a new, interesting technology that can be applied, but I think we need to look at it in this framework, right? Of how does it augment the things that we are and are not good at. My first job out of high school, I had a couple months, I was gonna go to college, I needed some money, I was bored, and so I went down to the Youth Employment Agency. This is the opposite of selling a $7 billion company. I went down to the Youth Employment Agency and I said, hey, I need a job. And they were like, what are you good at? I was like, computers. And then she said, well, that's great, but what you're probably gonna be doing is moving boxes for old ladies for $8 an hour. And I was like, done. Sign me up for that, old lady. I need some money. So some other company called in, needed data entry, so I went and I did this data entry. So I ended up actually being able to work on computers. And I did data entry, and we were using this program called Fox Pro. I'm very old. We were using a program called Fox Pro, and somebody would call in. We were doing registration control for like these big conferences like this, and somebody would call in and say, hey, I want to spam a bunch of people with actual physical mail, so give me a list of everybody that has these demographics. And my department would go through, and we'd mark every record in this database as marked, and then unmark everything that had one of these demographics, and then compact it, and then send it out. It took forever. And one weekend, I'm the data entry guy, right? One weekend, I took the Fox Pro book home, and I read through it, and I read about this thing called SQL, and I came in the next day, and I wrote a program that put everybody in my department out of a job that day. We had nothing else to do anymore, right? The program was so fast, it could do everything in real time, and so the person who would pick up the phone call and take the order was able to do our jobs in real time, print out the thing, and ship it off, and it never actually had to come back to us. And so what do you think happened, right? What happened was we all got fired. No, that's not what happened. That's never what happens, right? That's not what technology does. Technology lets people focus on something that's more interesting, focus on something that humans are better at, right? And I think that this is what AI will do, what any new technology will do, right? It won't put people out of a job. It'll give everybody more interesting jobs. It'll give everybody more human jobs. And what I'm working on right now is a version control system, which is in the software development space. And so what's interesting to me is, what is the future of software development? And I think everybody can do this in every industry, right? Look at what is the future of where you're going by looking at the problem sets and what AI can be good at, and what human beings, what their hunger and their love and their anger and their creativity and their dirt can be better at, right? And try to separate that and try to figure out, what does that future look like? And for software development, what the title of the talk technically is The Death of the Text Editor, because I look at all the things that I do as a software developer and what seems highly inefficient, right? What I love doing is solving problems. What I love doing is looking at logic and fixing it, right? Or looking at a problem set and creating something that fills that need. What I don't love doing is finding out what file, something's in, or what path some bug is in, right? Or opening up things and searching through files and finding stuff. And I find the text editor, interestingly, is going to be, in my opinion, is going to be something that we're not using anymore. Because what I think the way that AI and human beings can work together with the strengths and weaknesses of both of us is that the future of software development is you will describe what you want, right? I don't know how many software developers are in this room, but software development is very non-deterministic, right? If there's 100 software developers in this room and we tell everyone in this room, please do this feature, every single one of us will do it differently, but every single one of us will do that thing, right? And so it doesn't really matter. There's not one right answer. And it turns out AI is very good at being non-deterministic, right? And so what I think software development will be is taking the creative dirt, the fun part, right? The taste, this solves this problem, or this is interesting, or this is good, that human beings are good at, and combining it with something that can write 100 programs, right? And you can say, here's what I want to do, and AI can do that simultaneously, right? It can fire up 100 cloud instances and try to write 100 different versions that could solve that, and test all of them and see what works, and then present 2 or 3 of them to you, and then you use your creativity and you use your creativity and taste to say, yes, this one, now let's iterate, now change it this way, give me 100 more, right? And then find 2 that go down that route. And I think that that's where software development is headed. And I find that very interesting because I want to work that way, right? I don't want to work. Now that I pay attention to it, I get frustrated with text editors or with a lot of the tooling that I'm using because it's doing, I have to spend my cycles on things that that I can't take advantage of my humanity for, that I can't take advantage of my love and my anger and my hate and my taste and my dirt, right? And so what I want to leave you with, I'm out of time here, what I want to leave you with is it's a fun experiment, right? Think about your industry, think about what you love doing, think about what you love creating, and figure out what in that workflow, what in that path do you not need to do? And is AI or are these new technology tools now capable of taking that off of your plate so that you can spend more time doing the things that your humanity is good at, right? So thank you very much, and I hope you have a good time at the conference. Thank you.